My mom left when I was 12. My stepfather stayed. The stranger became my only family, and only after he died did I learn what he left me. My mother came back with a lawyer. In court, she smirked. Then someone revealed he kept letters every year for 23 years. He wasn't my dad. He never tried to be, not in any loud or obvious way. He was just the quiet man my mom married when I was 9, the kind of person who learned which brand of cereal I liked and made sure it was always in the cabinet. He didn't show up to things with balloons. He did smaller things. He turned the TV down when I was doing homework without being asked. When I had a nightmare at 10 and wandered out to the living room at 2 in the morning, he was already awake, and he just slid over on the couch and handed me the other end of the blanket without making it a whole thing. When my mom left for someone else on a Tuesday with 2 suitcases, he sat me down at the kitchen table and told me the truth as carefully as I've ever heard anyone tell it. He said adults sometimes make choices that hurt people they love. He said it wasn't about me. He said he was going to stay, not as a reassurance, as a fact. He adopted me when I was 14. I signed the papers in a small wood-paneled room that smelled like old paper, and the judge asked if this was what I wanted, and I said yes, and I meant it more than I had ever meant anything. We weren't a dramatic family after that. Dinner most nights, nature documentaries on Sundays. He taught me to drive in an empty parking lot. When I graduated, he shook my hand and pulled me into a hug that lasted about 4 seconds longer than either of us expected, and we both pretended not to notice. I moved 3 hours away for college, then stayed in the city. We talked on Sunday mornings. He visited every April and always brought the same brand of coffee because he'd noticed once, years ago, that it was the kind I kept, and he never forgot a detail like that. He died in February. Heart. Quick. A neighbor found him. I drove those 3 hours in just under 2.5 and spent a week in his house handling what needed to be handled. I didn't fall apart until I found the notepad on the refrigerator, the one he kept for things he meant to fix. The broken window latch was still on the list, and at the very bottom, in smaller handwriting, was my name, with a question mark next to it. I have never figured out exactly what he meant by that. 11 days after he died, his attorney called. I was eating a granola bar over the break room sink when I found out he'd left me the house and $1.9 million in savings. He had lived quietly and spent carefully his entire life, and I had never thought to wonder what that added up to. I cried in my car for 20 minutes. Then I went back to my desk and got on with the afternoon, because that's what he would have done. 6 weeks later, I got a certified letter. My mother was contesting the will. Undue influence, her lawyer said. The claim was that I had manipulated a man with a civil engineering degree and 40 years of meticulous record-keeping into leaving me his estate. I read it twice in the parking lot of my apartment building, then went inside and made tea and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. For 2 months, I watched paperwork move back and forth. I gathered documents, birthday cards, phone records, evidence of a relationship that needed no evidence to me, but apparently had to be demonstrated to a court. In June, there was a mediation session. My mother sat across a table from me for the first time in 8 years. She looked older. She did not look sorry. Her attorney suggested my relationship with my stepfather had been strategically cultivated. He used the word strategically 4 times in 1 hour. When it ended, I walked to my car and thought about the couch at 2 in the morning. The notepad, 4-second hugs and April visits and the right brand of coffee. I was not afraid of losing. I was afraid of how ugly it was going to get before we won. The hearing was set for September. A week before it, my attorney called and said he'd found something in my stepfather's files that the other side hadn't known existed. For 8 years, my stepfather had been writing what he called letters of record, not addressed to anyone, just placed in a folder in his filing cabinet, labeled by year. They were dated and specific. The Sunday calls, the April visits, the time I drove through a snowstorm because he said he was fine, and I knew he was only half fine. He had kept them the way he kept everything, because he was an engineer, and engineers document, and it was simply who he was. The hearing lasted less than 3 hours. My attorney laid out 23 years of a man's life exactly as it had been lived. The judge looked up from the letters and said to opposing counsel, "I'm having difficulty identifying the legal basis for the influence claim given the documentary record before me."